Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and today we are actually talking about biometric data collection by country, and I'd be so curious to know how your country fared against mine. Now, this is really fascinating because we are going to be talking about the worst and the best countries out there, and the numbers are in for 96 countries around the world. And this report by Paul Bischoff of Comparitech is a fascinating look at just how much information our governments are collecting on us and why we need good data privacy laws, whether they're biometric or otherwise. I will link the study in the comments and wherever you're watching or listening to this, but let's dive into this because I think it's deeply concerning any way you cut it. Now, if you think about it, biometrics like photos for passports, fingerprints to verify your identity for institutions like banks continue to rise. We are using biometrics more than ever. So Comparitech did their homework as to which government is collecting what, and they scored them. They found out where biometrics are being taken, what they're being taken for, and how they're being stored, while also exploring the latest biometric updates amid the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. And to quote their methodology directly, and I quote, "There is a huge scope for biometric data collection, so we have identified 8 key areas that apply to most countries so as to offer a fair country-by-country comparison and to ensure the data is available. Each country has been scored out of 31, with low scores indicating extensive and invasive use of biometrics and or surveillance, and a high score demonstrating better restrictions and regulations regarding biometric use and surveillance." Then, to see how the current biometric use for COVID-19 purposes affects a country's score, we've deducted a point for each area biometrics have been introduced as an emergency control method, 6 areas in total. So in other words, unlike golf, low score sucks. High score, great. Now, here are some of their key findings. And again, this is all coming from this report, and I think everybody should read this. Again, I will link it. Some of their key findings are that many countries collect travelers' biometrics data, often through visas or biometric checks at airports. They also found that the vast majority of countries that they studied use biometrics for bank accounts. So, for example, fingerprints to access online application data or to confirm identities within the banks themselves. Despite many countries recognizing biometric data as sensitive, increased biometric use is being widely accepted. Another point is that facial recognition closed-circuit TV or CCTV is being implemented in a large number of countries, or is at least being tested, meaning facial recognition, which is a biometric recognition, is on the rise. European Union countries scored better overall than non-European Union countries due to their GDPR regulations, but that's to some extent, and I will get to that because I went looking for those EU countries, and I've got them. Now, many of the top scoring countries don't necessarily receive their high scores for quote-unquote best practices, but because they are developing nations that haven't moved towards technology-based solutions in certain areas, they score higher, and I will get to that too because I went looking again for the best and the worst. Now, here are the top 5 worst countries for biometric data collection and use, and number 1 shouldn't surprise you at all, scoring 2 out of 31. Again, low score is bad, high score is good. 2 out of 31 is the worst score that any country got, and you probably in your mind are thinking this, most of you, that is China. That's right, they only managed to score 2 points. 1, and I quote, "for its lack of biometric voting system, and 1 for its allowance of passport holders from Singapore, Brunei, and Japan to enter the country visa-free for up to 15 days. Its score for not having a biometric voting system also comes with a little irony, as the voting system is heavily controlled, which perhaps rids the need for biometric voting." So in other words, their voting system, which is very heavily controlled right now, if they were to add an additional layer to that control of biometrics, they would score 1 point. And if it wasn't for Singapore, Brunei, and Japanese visitors to their country for 15 days, they might have scored 0. That is obviously a horrible score, and I think the world is hoping that they get data privacy laws. Now, some key areas for China, and we're going to go through China more than anybody because they are the worst offender. And to quote the study again, Its extensive nationwide biometric database is being expanded to include DNA, if you didn't know that. Again, to quote, its widespread and invasive use of facial recognition technology in CCTV cameras, as our previous study surveillance states found, facial recognition cameras are now being used to track and monitor the country's Muslim minority, Uyghurs, among other things. To quote again, its lack of safeguards for employees in the workplace. Companies have been permitted to monitor employees' brain waves for productivity while they're at work. I actually did an interesting one on a cushion manufacturer in China that was essentially tracking via a smart cushion they were developing when their employees were sitting down and not, and then HR would question them, hey, why are you taking like a half an hour break? Why aren't you at your desk? That is China. Also, fingerprints of basically anyone entering China are taken. I can attest to that personally, as I have been to China on business. They've got my fingerprints. That was the only way I could get in. Number 2 is Costa Rica, interestingly enough. And to quote, particularly concerning is Costa Rica's 2 national biometric databases. One will include every Costa Rican over the age of 12, the other every foreigner that enters the country. Police also have full access, and both will help facilitate the upcoming facial recognition systems. So obviously that's a huge problem for them. Clocking in at number 3 with a score of 5 out of 31 is the country of Iran. They have biometrics database that's accessible by police, and they are considered extensive and invasive. They also lack adequate protections for the use of biometrics, and the collection of travelers' biometrics is obviously on a large scale as well. Clocking in at number 4 is actually a 6-way tie because, again, they have a scoring system, and so many countries score the same, and you will see that as I go on. But Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Bangladesh, the Philippines, and Uganda, and the United States of America are the 4th worst countries for biometric data collection on the planet. That's right. If you are watching me, and the majority of you are probably Americans, as I am sitting here in Chicago, Illinois, we are the 4th worst country on the planet for biometrics data. And to quote the study, the biggest shock in the bottom 5 is the United States, which ranks as one of the 4th worst countries for biometric data collection and use. This year, it remains fourth worst, despite a further 45 countries being included in the study at this time. They added 45 countries to make it 96, and here we are. To continue, most concerning is a lack of specific law to protect citizens' biometrics. While there is a handful of state laws that protect state residents' biometrics, as can be seen in our state privacy study, and in Chicago, the state of Illinois has a biometric privacy law. I should be getting money from Facebook thanks to that sooner than later. This does leave many U.S. citizens' biometrics exposed, as there is no federal law in place. This is something I have talked about over and over and over. We need our own GDPR here that is staying within the U.S. Constitution and our right to privacy as declared in the Constitution, interpreted by the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, that's obviously a huge problem. Clocking in at number 5, right behind our 6 out of 31, is 7 out of 31, and that is Iraq and Malaysia. They obviously have these issues. Now, some other notable worst offenders clocking in at number 6 is Russia. Number 9 is a 3-way tie for Australia, Japan, and India. The worst European Union score that I could find, which is also tied for number 9, was the country of Hungary. Number 11 on the worst scale is Canada, and Israel and Germany tied right behind Canada for number 12. And so that is obviously a very concerning list, because even the European Union countries are basically not doing so well. But let's talk real quick about the best countries for your biometric data privacy. If you want the best, absolute best privacy for your biometrics data, you need to emigrate and become a citizen of Turkmenistan. That's right, Turkmenistan scored 25 out of 31. And to quote, While Turkmenistan's appearance at the top of our study may be a surprise, this is likely due to a lack of development within the country. For example, no known biometric database exists, and the use of CCTV with facial recognition isn't known. There are two heavy scoring areas which help boost Turkmenistan's score. However, we shouldn't let this detract from the fact that Turkmenistan, unlike many other countries, has a data protection law in place which recognizes biometric data as sensitive data. This helps safeguard citizens, travelers, and employees' data from abuse. That's right, plucky Turkmenistan is the best country in the world, as we know, out of 96 countries per Comparitech to move to if you want biometric. The second best? Ethiopia. They're in the same boat as Turkmenistan because, again, developing country, so they don't have a lot of technical basically infrastructure. Number 3, basically 20 out of 31 was their score, was Azerbaijan and Bahrain. Now, what I find interesting is we do have some countries that have technological infrastructure in place quite extensively, because at number 4, scoring 21 out of 31, was Ireland and Portugal. Those are EU countries. That is very interesting. They are the best European Union countries for your data privacy. And I know that when I do my breaches of the week, about, a handful of times every few months, I see somebody having to report to the Irish watchdog because the company is in Ireland, and so they are pretty much on it. Number 5 is a multiple way tie, 17 out of 31. So the 5th best countries, I should say, on the planet for your biodata privacy is Guatemala, Luxembourg in the EU, Paraguay, Poland, Romania, Tunisia, and the United Kingdom. That's right, UK citizens clock in at number 5 as well, which I found absolutely fascinating. And so those are your worst and those are your best. I will link this study in the comments section. You should all go check it out, but I would love to know what country you're from, where you're at, and what you think about this, and that is your news of the day. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP, and please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe and stay online and stay private. Thanks, everyone.